welcome again to David English on the record. And we're going to finish up in the States for a change, but we're going to start with China because lots is going on at the moment there. And the favourite quote, of course, the axis of evil. We've got the coming together of the big four of India and China and Russia and North Korea. And they seem to be having a jolly good time at the expense of the West. In fact, I'll give you a quote. The West has lost its way into chaos, and we in the East are bringing back the rising sun and order. That's an interesting quote, isn't it?
It is, yes. Considering they made the chaos. Yes, it's very interesting.
Now, look, have we got to be afraid of the situation, David, and do something about it?
Well, we have to do something. Like, if we don't do something about it, then we have to be afraid. But if we do something about it, no, I don't think we do. And I think there's multiple things going on there. Number one, Russia and China are uneasy allies. Putin doesn't trust China as much as China doesn't trust Putin. China wants Russian territory. Putin knows this. So it's in his strategic interest to make a deal with China because America won't back him to be their ally in the East to keep them at bay. So he has to become their friend. He's not stupid. He's not a stupid man. But he'd much rather deal with us because we're not going to try and poison him or assassinate him if he's our ally. But there's a lot of things about China. Number one, they've got an untested military. They have a high failure rate of equipment. Now, it's a massive army. So if there was to be a conflict, they would get initial victories. But because there's no battle testing ever, like even in the Second World War, they hid from everything and let the Chinese nationalists take care of it. So, when the Japanese invaded, the famous Long March wasn't a long march. It was a long run away. And only, I think he started off with like nearly 1 million men or something, and only 50,000 remained at the end because they all died or ran off. So that was his way of just going all the way around China to evade the Japanese in the Kuomintang. So I think we have an immediate threat in multiple forms. I don't think Xi is going to last. I think he's either going to be deposed or he's ill. And I think whoever replaces him will be a lunatic. But I think we have to have that in order to finish them off. Because at the minute, everyone's playing status quo. Everyone's kind of, oh, well, let's just leave everything as it is. It's almost like we've come to this unhappy agreement with the state of the world. And I think we almost need to be like, no, certain things just need vanquished from the world for good. And we need to get this mentality back. And it'll take a problem with China to do that. So India, I think, is an uneasy bedfellow. Trump and Modi previously got along very, very well. Modi was a huge supporter of Trump. They filled that stadium, nearly 1 million people in India back in 2019, and the whole stadium was chanting for Trump. So I think Modi feels very, very slighted that Trump tariffed India so heavily. But Trump's doing that because Modi's essentially offloading his surplus population that he doesn't want to care for into the West. And essentially destroying India and Europe. So Trump's obviously hitting back at that, and Modi's taking a hump with it, and he's gone on this relationship with China. But in 2020, India and China had a war, and I think India is all too keen of the threat that China poses, and I think China is going to kick India, but I think India will thump China.
Another interesting fact that we had a hot mic situation when they were all being matey. They didn't realize the mic was open. And although we sort of look at these things and say, oh, well, these important characters know what they're talking about, and this is that and the other, not realizing, of course, many times this has all been decided by civil servants before the show starts. And they started chatting among themselves. And actually, I regard this as very sinister. The chat was about Xi and Putin were chatting. Now, they're age 72. And they were talking about, we know now that we can probably live to 150. Interesting. When you get to 72, you start thinking, well, we're nearing the end. And how do we lengthen our lives? Well, we put new organs in ourselves. Now, that is interesting and sinister because, as we know, how they're treating Uyghurs and Christians in China, harvesting organs at every direction.
Yeah, I mean, she opened that up. No, Putin opened that up by talking about organ harvesting, and she's responded by saying, "Yeah, we can live for 150 years." Where do the organs come from? Nobody's willingly going to give you a heart, and you're not going to take a heart from an old person either. You're going to take a young heart. So it is very, very sinister. And this is the great crime. I've been saying for decades, this is the backdrop to absolutely everything, because China have murdered millions of their own citizens for the highest bidder to chop their bodies up and sell all the parts. They know that we know, the American administrations know. I know personally that the British administrations have known since Blair. I know that the EU knows and has been recording everything since Edward Macmillan Scott was involved since 2007. They know that if they lose the dominance war that they're now trying to fight with America for, they will hang. And this is behind everything. This is why they're trying to destroy the West. This is why they'll be working with the drug cartels and the banking cartels and everything else to try and destroy the West. It's like when Genghis Khan used to go out and fight, he used to take all the foreign conscripts and he used to send them first to weaken the army, to pull them down before his horsemen came in and finished them off. That's what China's trying to do. We can't get to China because we've been front loaded with the third world. So it's incredibly disgusting. It's incredibly sinister. If she sides with this, then she's days are in fact numbered.
Yeah, not a pleasant thought, is it? Let's move on to something that you also alluded to. There's a big circus around the fact that China has built so many, especially the Navy's been reinforced phenomenally. And you see these destroyers and cruisers, and they all look the modern shape that hides them from radar. And you think, wow, they've got that many vessels outnumbering the Americans in certain cases. But there's been a recent exercise, and the truth may be coming out. And that is who is controlling the boat? Well, presumably the captain and his admiral behind the scenes. But they did an exercise, let's put it that way, whereby it was a close encounter with an American vessel. And they were playing war games, I suppose. And what happened is that the radar of a Chinese ship locked on to the American vessel. Now, you don't do that because the reaction normally is to get the red button out. You locking onto my ship means you're about to fire a missile. Now, fortunately, the American had a sophisticated system that detected it was done in error. Now, the Chinese are so far behind, they'd be a danger to themselves, David, no matter how many destroyers they had.
Thankfully, yeah. Pageant army. They're a pageant military. That's what they are. Because they're untested. It doesn't matter how big it is. They've only got a tiny hardcore of actual soldiers. Everyone else is a forced conscript who doesn't want to be there. So it's not like when you sign up to fight for the Americans or the British, where you want to do it because you want to do it because you're proud. They don't have that. So their technology has a high failure rate. It has a high dysfunction rate. They're not savvy on the rules of engagement. They've been so isolated and insular for so long. It's not like they're absorbing knowledge from the West about how to do this because they're suspicious of it all. So once they get locked into conflicts, they'll get a shock and awe because they've got size and number of things, but the quality of those things is low. Once you move past the shock and awe phase, which is the initial stage of any military, they have virtually zero experience. So you put them up against the Americans and even the British, and they would struggle at proper warfare. Now they're going to be relying on EMP technology, electromagnetic pulse technology. They're going to be relying on knocking out satellites and things like that, which is great. And if you do that, what you're doing is you're then taking war back 100 years to men on the ground. Well, they've never defeated the West in that situation, ever. Like nobody, who's defeated the British in that situation? There's virtually nobody has. So what chance do you really think you're going to get against what would become combined Anglo forces, right? Because the Americans would pull the Australians and the Canadians and the Kiwis in on this, and the British. So what do you think you're going to do when the Anglo world comes to you? It's like, are you really serious about this? So I don't think they stand much of a chance, but they would create carnage initially. But we have the continuous, unbroken line of engagement, particularly the English. We have not been in a war for 1,000 years.
Indeed.
So what are you going to do against a nation which is actually mentally and institutionally incredibly tough when it comes to warfare? It doesn't matter how big we are. We know how to work with the size that we've got. Look, we were in and out in Iraq, putting transponders and disabling missile launchers and all the rest of it without the Iraqis even knowing we were there.
Despite the snowflake generation, we're still tough, are we?
Well, yeah, because you only see that on the surface, because that's metal that hasn't been tempered. What the military does is temper it. So that's kids who've just been grown up and been mollycoddled by their parents, who haven't necessarily put responsibility onto their soldiers' shoulders because they thought it was cruel. But underneath is still an Englishman or a Scotsman or a Welshman. Like, you can't, once that spirit gets activated in them, you can't take it away. But once you push a Scotsman to the point where he's having it, do you care, do you? Then that's it, He's gonna go full Highlander on you, isn't he? It's the same with the Welshman. Like, Welshmen come across as very affable, but strongest backs in the world, man. Like, you don't want to push the Brits to that level. So we have it in us naturally. It needs to be brought out. And when the conditions are there to activate that, they're as hard as nails, and the British Army proves that.
And the Welsh rugby team, of course, for donkey's years, having very few to select from, have proved a point in that direction. David, let's move on. We have, lastly, to mention, you've worked for the Epoch Times over in the US, things Chinese, for many years. And I'm getting some strange vibes from America. They don't believe the state of the British nation. What has happened to Britain? Have they lost it completely? Can you fill us in?
Yeah, so people say Britain's fallen. It's like, no, actually, the establishment's fallen, but the people haven't. And the establishment consists of a handful of a few thousand people who are backed by a few million. But the 54 million native population, of which 80% kind of lean one way, they haven't fallen at all. We're just watching the establishment collapse because it's been infiltrated and there's a disease spreading through it. But they get the tip of the spear where it's all exaggerated. Most Americans think England is 50% Muslim. It's not 6. Let's just say there's some unaccounted, and maybe it's 7 or something, but it's 7 million people versus 54 million people. And the majority of them don't want to fight. The majority of them, if we banned the hijab and the niqab and the burqa and halal, would just leave. Once we stop benefits, which we're going to have to because we don't have any money, the millions will leave. They're not here for the fight. The same with a lot of the Africans. People ask them in the street if there's a war, and they would say, "No, man, not my fight. I'm going home." So they don't want to be here. But America gets it. And one of my American, I kept pointing it out, and she basically went, "Shh, don't say anything. Let us report it like that, because it's the only way that people in DC will pay attention." So a lot of American commentators know that they have to shout it as loud as possible to make the American political elite sit up and take notice. Now, it is worrying because we've got problems with free speech, etc. But those problems are reactions to us saying, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. No, you can't. So the people are exerting their will, and the politicians, they're not in control. They're in a game of reaction now. They've lost control of the country. We're controlling the country, and they're merely responding. So everything they do, the British find a way around it. We just do, So you can't protest. You can't do this. Oh, let's fly the flag then. Okay, well, we'll put the flag up everywhere. You can't have a demonstration outside of migrant hotels. All right, let's all the mothers will go and do it then. They'll all dress in pink, take some ghetto blasters and have a barbecue and make a party outside of the hotel, because you're not really going to storm and charge them now, are you? So everywhere we'll find a way around, and there's two things happening. We're taking back control of our nation gleefully, which is the way the English always approached war. We always went to war with a smile, right? Just come on, let's get it. We're doing exactly the same here. We take things, we have a very joyful disposition, even in war, but we're exposing them. You can't fight an enemy you can't see. It all has to be put out into broad daylight so we can pick it apart. It has to. So we're pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing because we need it exposed. We need to see exactly what it is that we're looking at. And when we do, we'll just destroy it.
What do you think about you mentioned the pink ladies there. When you look at all the people on the opposite side, there's usually a small group of them shouting and screaming the same cliche. It's rent a mob. They turn up at it for every cause, their cause. Now, the police must know this, David. Why aren't they taking action against this group?
Well, because the police will be politically aligned with them. That's why. I mean, these are charities which you'll find that the police are linked to, allegedly. You'll find that there is links. There'll be links. It'll be circular. It'll be a circular thing. It'll be politically, ideologically aligned. We know these things are aligned with the Labour Party. We know these things are aligned with the unions. The police force is aligned with both of them. So, or at least the top of the police force is. But the police force are then at the same time scratching their heads, wondering why they're losing public support. It's like, what do you expect? What do you expect when our women and children are being raped and murdered, and we're just asking you to stop letting in the people who are doing it, and you're arresting us for it? What do you think is going to happen then?
I'm thinking of things that have been hidden for 25 years, like the grooming gangs, as an example. I mean, do they suffer in America with anything like this?
Absolutely, yeah. There's 250,000 to 300,000 kids in grooming networks in America every year. You have it, and if in all of their cities where they have large Muslim populations, this will be going on. But it's been going on for decades. We know it's been going on in Hollywood since the days of Fatty Arbuckle. It goes on in DC. We know it does. It goes on in the adult industry in the United. Where do you think all these 18-year-old girls come from? They don't just walk in at 18, right? It goes on in the Mormon Church. It goes on in the Freemasons. It'll be going on in synagogues. It'll be going on everywhere. Everywhere there is corruption, there is grooming. Absolutely, 100%. And it's the big unspoken thing in America. How many people in trailer parks are selling their daughters and their nieces into prostitution? It's no different. It's absolutely no different. It's a much bigger problem in America than it is here. So when they all scream, "Oh, you haven't done anything about it," it's like, well, actually, we have done anything about it. We tend to do things on case by cases basis, but we do suffer the wrath of either being arrested or having our houses burnt down with all of the remaining children in it. But you've had a problem like this in your country for over 100 years, and you haven't done anything about it either. So the problems exist on both sides. But the British tend to deal with things on a one-to-one, very quiet, where you don't hear about it. You don't hear about the guy who gets cornered outside the takeaway on his way home and gets beaten up or whatever, his leg's broken. You don't hear about those things because that's not how we do things. We do things very discreetly. But the grooming gangs was essentially covered up so vastly that nobody knew about it till 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And then it was presented in such a way that it was historic. It had happened. That's how they presented it. Because all of the people who were testifying had grown up. So they made it out like this was a problem, but it isn't anymore. And then we've only found out in the last few years that and particularly this year, that it is, and the depravity of it. So they made it out like it was one or two girls. And they made it out that they were just kind of giving them drink and then taking advantage of them. The full horror has only just come out. And even then, I don't think it's all of it. I don't think we've been told everything. So it's not like we've known about this forever. We haven't. And the people in the local towns, the government and the police just shut it down. So it stayed in that tiny local community only and didn't go beyond that. Nobody knew about it till 2010, 2011. And then it was, like I said, it was oh, this has happened. Has being the past tense. And then you find, oh, hang on, no, there was another one, another one. And every time they presented it, it was, well, this ring has now been shut down. But it hasn't. It's still ongoing. We've just been lied to. And like I said, it's only been the last year or two that it's all beginning to come to light. But the people who are protecting them are in politics. The people who are protecting them are in government. Jess Phillips is guilty. Jess Phillips is as guilty as sin, and she's admitted on the record that she knew all about it, and she knew it was being covered up, and she did nothing. She should go to jail. So when you've got a systematic government cover-up of the abuse, rape, torture, and murder of its own citizens, and they are now running the country and the police force, how much can you get away with? And what will happen is the collective rage will just boil over, and these people will get thrown out of government. Just the moral injustice of having a protectionist ring for rapist pedophiles as your government should be like, we should have the Spartans on our door. If this was ancient Greece, we'd have the Spartans on our door for offending the gods. It's disgusting. And there will be a reckoning for the English. I'm telling you, there will be a reckoning for the English, and they will be terrified when it happens.
As usual, David, very interesting. Lots to think about there.
Thank you very much, Rodney. Thank you.